Hi, everybody. I'm Gwen Flynn.
And I'm Donna Ellis.
Welcome to New Answers podcast. And today, our topic of discussion is rewarding ourselves as we take our steps through the actions we're going to be involved in addressing a challenge that we're facing. I think in one of our uh, installations on this podcast, we talked about some challenges that we've been facing. And I know on the last conversation that we had, Donna, we had kind of plotted out how we might address those challenges and the different steps that we would take. And so, and in the discussion of that, what surfaced is the need for, because certainly our plotting, it depends on what the issue is that we're faced with, and whether or not there's a short-term way of addressing it, or if it's an intermediate way of addressing it in terms of periods of time, or if it's a long-range way of addressing it. And certainly if it's a long-range issue, that we need to dedicate some time to reward ourselves in order to keep motivated and keep the energy going. Um, is that what you would take away from the conversation?
Yes, definitely. And also that it helps us acknowledge that we are working, we are getting results. So whether it's short or long term, or whether it's a life changing outcome that might be a reward in and of itself, if we acknowledge the steps along the way, it's like, I didn't even understand this topic. And now I'm talking about it. I've gathered some resources. I feel very comfortable around it. Those are big things to acknowledge. Once you get to a particular step, you know that you've really accomplished something. And, whatever you do, it applies. So whether it's personal or professional or civic, reward yourself. And what do you think? How would you define a reward? It's so personal in that sense. It's not like somebody's giving you a plaque because you have a lifetime achievement. What's a reward to you, Gwen?
Yeah, I think people do, when they hear rewards, they think about the material things that you get, especially if you come from this world of work. There's an acknowledgement through a certificate of completion or a plaque or some kind of statuette. What I consider a reward is something that puts a smile on my face, something that makes me smile. That's how I personally kind of define a reward. And so, no, it doesn't take a plaque or a watch or some other kind of material thing. It's just something that puts a smile on my face. How do you define it?
Yes, and also a sense of reset. I like to find little reset buttons because to me, a vacation is a big thing that has to be planned, and then I need a vacation from the vacation. I'm not a traveler. So, to me, a reward is something very ordinary and very day to day, but it also has to do with timing. I like spontaneity. So if it's like I have completed all these marketing materials or I've looked at my plan for 2023, and that's a big accomplishment. And I'm thinking, next time I get a chance to do something that really makes me feel like I'm getting a reset, I'm going to go do that. And it can be something as simple as driving up to my favorite coffee place and getting their cup of coffee. There's a local roaster and they sell coffee on the spot as well as beans. And just going into that atmosphere, knowing this place has been in business for so long and seeing the good people that work there and the customers, to me, that's better than any travel or going to stare at something, whatever vacations are to people. Obviously, my my opinion of travel is not very high, but your mileage may vary. But I really enjoy just doing very ordinary daily things, and it can also be just taking a walk in the evening.
Oh,
Once in,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of listed out some of the things that um, I consider rewards, and some of them I've done myself. Some of them are yet to be done. And I came up with like 10 activities, let's call them.
Mm,
And they could be categorized in different ways, but one of them is music, singing to a song. I mean, just in like carving out some time. And I mean, it doesn't have to be a regimented thing, but it could be, as you say, spontaneous. But I hate doing the dishes. I have a dishwasher, but I really rather do the dishes myself since, kind of I live alone and I don't use that many dishes. And I feel like I don't need to use a dishwasher for the little bit of dishes that I use. So to get me through even those, that little tedious process and to reward myself, I'll sing a song, while I'm washing the dishes. Not that anybody would want to hear it necessarily, but it's for me and it puts a smile on my face and it helps me get through that task. And it helps me know that I've accomplished the task because sometimes I can, leave dishes in the sink for a couple of days. But like Love on Top, the Beyonce song, I'll sing that as best as I can. Or Bruno Mars's Uptown Funk, I'll sing that and sometimes dance to it. I will dance to it. And it puts a smile on my face and it just, helps me feel like, yes, this is a marker of an accomplishment that I've made. You mentioned a walk. Anything in nature for me is a way of putting a smile on my face and probably could consider what you term a reset. So I can walk in the neighborhood, I can walk, in the park or some green space near me. Sitting on the beach is another way of rewarding myself. And Donna, I know you can relate to this. Putting my hands in dirt, that to me, that's a reward. I use that as a reward for, having marked off something on my list. Um, I could go on and on and on, but those are some examples. And
those
yeah,
are really great. Yeah, I'd like to hear more of them. I agree with so many of them and the approach, but I think it's good for people to hear, some ideas of what that is because first of all, a reward doesn't exactly have to be planned, but you can have a short list. And you can also just, when the mood strikes you, do it as well as reward yourself with the process of getting through something that maybe you don't particularly like by having the reward itself while you're doing it, like singing while you wash the dishes.
yeah, absolutely. Playing with pets, I don't have a pet. You have pets, so I'm sure you can relate to that. Just taking a minute or two, to throw a ball or toss a, I don't know, something at a pet, and to me that can be a reward. Some of what I'm talking about can also fall under the category of a hobby and go into your hobby. Playing with children, especially getting into the mindset of seeing the world through their eyes. And you can do that when you're playing with them if you have access to some children in your life. There's the creative process, of course. I mentioned music, um, and that could be the writing of music or writing prose or just writing in general, writing down your feelings. Also under the creative is it could be visual, it could be tactile, just using your sensory, your sensory whatever whatever, your the sensory attributes that you have. So where that's concerned, it could be painting, watercolor, or oil, whatever it is. And, it doesn't have to be elaborate. I mean, it could be even doodling and making some designs on paper and then maybe coloring it. The tactile could be, using clay or knitting. People like to knit or crochet. For taste and smell, cooking for me, that's another thing that puts a smile on my face, is being creative about cooking and maybe creating new recipes and new flavors. And the term that I heard from chefs, putting together flavor profiles, that can be fun, and that could be a way of rewarding yourself. I mentioned, writing, and it's, it could be music, or it could be, prose or whatever, poetry. Things that stimulate your mind sometimes helps you to feel like, you are rewarding yourself. And if it puts a smile on your face, working on puzzles, those are mind stimulants. Word games, crossword puzzles or Scrabble or whatever, those kind of stimulate your mind. And then the last one I would say is to do nothing. That could be a reward. Just sitting still and maybe closing your eyes or maybe not, but listening to your breath, the pattern of your breathing, listening to your heartbeat, or staring at an object in the room. I know that sounds kind of unusual, let's call it. But sitting still and doing nothing, and doing what I think it was Deepak Chopra said, trying to expand the spaces between your thoughts. I mean, and that's a form of meditation. I kind of hesitated to use the term meditation because people go off into, oh, that's too airy-fairy and too ethereal. But I tell you, if you can sit still for, it doesn't even take long, 2 minutes maybe, and just listen to your breath, your breathing, or stare at an object sort of at a distance, and try to expand those spaces between your thoughts, that's a reward. Because you feel like, I feel like the way I describe certain things, it kind of, I'm always going to food and taste. And so when you're having a meal and you are between courses, there's always an opportunity to sort of cleanse your palate before you get to the next course. That's how I see this, especially doing nothing. It's like cleansing your brain palette before you go to the next thing. And it's rewarding. It really is, because you somehow feel energy, even though you're doing nothing. Well, I guess that's what gives you the energy. You feel energized, you feel, okay, like you said, reset. All right, I've reset. Now I'm ready to go on to the next thing. This last week, I had a chance to spend some time with a friend that I hadn't seen in, like, I don't know, a couple of months. Even through the pandemic, we've been connecting with each other, but certainly, not as often as we used to. And this is a former coworker, and she sort of planned this get together, this gathering, and it was to take a tour of a garden that is part of the mansion of a sort of well-known famous person. That's not important, but the fact that we took this garden tour, so we were outdoors, we were walking, and we were among these living things in nature. Again, that's nature. And then afterwards, we got together for lunch at a restaurant and we sat out. It was a cafe, and we sat out outside rather than indoors. And I said to her, "Oh my God, I feel like my brain has been cleansed, and like your palate is cleansed because there's so much going on in the world, and you if you don't shut yourself off from it, you can get caught up in it, and you can become, I don't know, just embroiled in the negativity that's out there."
Mhm.
And so this was this was a reward for me, having that, spending that time outside. In both cases, it was, the tour and the lunch outside, and being around nature. It was a reward, and it was like I had cleansed. I had a chance to cleanse the palate of my brain, if that makes any sense, before I go on to the next thing. So those are some examples that come to mind, and that most of which I have used. I mean, I'm not too much into the puzzles necessarily, or I will play Scrabble, but not too many of the word games. But the other things that I named, I have used and tried as rewards for myself, and it's amazing how these simple little things. I mean, outside of that lunch and the tour, these things cost you nothing. They cost you nothing, and they can be spontaneous, and but gives you the same amount of reward. It puts a smile on my face. They put a smile on yours too.
I think those are great, Gwen. Yes, I definitely concur with the gardening and with the outdoors and the value of being able to, even if we don't meditate, contemplate, like you were talking about, looking at an object, to just be able to contemplate when you go to a museum, the beauty of that object and that another human being conceptualized this and then actually made it.
Yeah,
And, that's something that can cleanse the palate too, since, today they say we have the attention span of a goldfish because of social media and the fast moving world we live in. But to be able to dial it back, and I love that idea of a palate cleanser for the brain, to put some space between the things that you have to think about and do, how valuable that is to be able to stop for a minute and say, okay, I'm rewarding myself by not not doing anything really and just spending time. You can go for a walk and just be enjoying nature, and nobody knows if you're thinking or doing or not. If you're on the phone with some little headset, there's nobody to bug you about the doingness of it all, which is really, um, I think, kind of the downfall of humanity right now. You have to constantly be occupied. So the
yeah,
reward is not being occupied. That's great.
I think it is, and you're right. I mean, we put too much emphasis or importance or value on constantly doing something, and that shouldn't. We should change that. We should, or at least have some balance, so that it's not constantly always doing something and thinking something. It's just enjoying life. I mean, looking at the environment that you're in, just from what I can see, and behind you on the top of the bookcase is these two baskets. I love baskets, first of all. And you mentioned sitting and contemplating an object. I would want to contemplate those objects and think about, because look at the pattern of design that those baskets are made of, and think about who did that. Somebody had to think about that, and put together the pattern, and then that ended up creating this. It's just a They're just beautiful pieces of art. I'm sure you store things in it, so there's some utility to it, but it's also beautiful to look at. And then there's that painting behind it. Did you do that?
Yes, that's mine. That's one of mine.
Oh my gosh. So yes, exactly. Being able to sit and to contemplate those kinds of things just is a way of refreshing and rewarding yourself. you know, and not having to do anything. You know, we need to create some balance between always going and doing something and thinking about whatever, and then not doing it, because I think that's where you get replenished. You know, you kind of get your batteries recharged so that you can go on to the next thing, the next step in your action plan of addressing whatever the challenge was that you were addressing. And I think just doing these little simple things, most of them with no cost, um, you will see how rewarding it is.
Yeah. Yes, and reward is very important to, I think, distinguishing reward with from some kind of outcome, because even with vacation, if you say you're going on vacation from work, they'll say, where are you going, what are you doing? It's like, am I not productive enough when I'm here? Must I also go and do and report back on that? And to me, that's where I think that's probably part of my problem with vacations, is that, in the old days, there was also a pile of work when I got back that nobody had really done. And also, it requires doing. And so for me, the reward is in the spontaneous, less than productiveness that allows that breathing space that you were talking about, or that pause between thoughts or projects.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely.
Mm.
I always relished the response that I gave to people who asked me, so what are you going to do? Where are you going to? And I would say, I'm going to do absolutely nothing. I do that very well. I'm going to go sit on the beach and maybe collect some shells, that have just washed up on the shore. So that's all I'm going to do. And people kind of look at me like, what? You call that a vacation? Yeah, I do. And I think if we shared that kind of experience, once we experience it ourselves and if we shared that more, it will become not so, people won't look at you sideways anymore. It'll become almost a norm. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Or acceptance anyway. I don't care whether they accept it or not. I've reached the age where I don't care what they think about me. I'm going to do it. And here's, this is who I am. And whatever your judgment of it is, that's on you. But I think it will become more of a practice, once we all share these kinds of activities or inactivities, that will become more of a mainstream than it is now. So yeah, I am all for promoting rewarding ourselves, because we tend to go through life taking certain things for granted and not even thinking about them. Things, work, and activity all the time. We just kind of do, go from one doing to another doing. And sometimes we don't even think about it. And that really wears on you. And if you have a project that you're working on, unless you're going to write it down, like I think we talked about in one of our installations, you don't even think about the steps that you're taking. And it's important for you to know those steps, because it does show a pattern of accomplishment, like you can check off those boxes so that you feel like you are making progress on addressing whatever this challenge is. And I think we need to include in that process some downtime and begin to value that downtime, because it does contribute to, as I keep saying, your ability to keep moving forward and make progress, because you're recharging your batteries. You're replenishing yourself. You've hit the reset button, as you said, and that needs to be recognize, don't let it don't gloss over it. Don't, pretend like, or, don't even, just don't think about it like we do with some of our other routines and activities. You should recognize it because it is of value and it is of importance in helping you to navigate life, basically. And it's part of our new answers to to challenges that we face. And I bet for those of you who are listening to this, I bet you have some activities that we didn't even mention here that we'd like to hear from you about. What is it you do that puts a smile on your face that you can say is a way that you can reward yourself as you're navigating your way through a challenge that you're facing? What do you do? You can put your answers in the comments space below this screen, I believe. Is that how it works, Donna?
That's right. Yeah, there's a comment space.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what your rewards are. And then we can share that back with everyone else, and who knows, maybe invite you on to talk about, how you reward yourself.
Right.
What do you
This is
think?
wonderful, Gwen. And I love hearing your list.
Yeah, and maybe I can put that together and just make it available for people to just reference. I mean, certainly it's not an instruction. It's just a sharing of ideas that will hopefully stimulate ideas of your own. Or, if you haven't thought about it, maybe it give you something, it might trigger some thoughts of your own about what it is you do. You probably do things that you don't even think about. You don't think of it as a reward, but hopefully this will make you look at it in a new way, and you will see it as a reward. So yeah, we can post that as part of some resources that we provide as part of this New Answers podcast.
Yes.
So, did you have anything else you want to add to this, Donna?
No, I think this is terrific. It's wonderful. Yeah.
So until next time, I'm Gwen.
And I'm Donna, and we'll see you soon on the New Answers podcast.
Yes. Bye-bye.